Hello, ever faithful Imperial citizens, and welcome back to Hobby Night. I am Sister Angela, and today I will be painting reinforcements for the Sisters of Battle in the name of the Emperor. That's right. Today, I will be painting up a brand new Paragon Warsuit bestowed upon us by the grace of the Emperor in his ever infinite wisdom. And I want to be approaching this Paragon Warsuit in a quick and easy method that even the lowliest of Imperial citizens and peasants could in fact follow. So, without further ado, let's get to our first step where we get her primed. I wanted to start today's painting process down in my Imperial bunker to talk a little bit about how I'm going to be priming this model up, because it's a bit different than how I normally go about priming my models when using contrast paint. Normally I would go with a very pale color tone such as Wraithbone or Gray Seer, but because I know I want my sister's armor to be black, I'm going to save myself a step and go ahead and prime her in black, and then go ahead and reprime everything that I want to put contrast paint on upstairs at the hobby desk. So if my cameraman could go ahead and step back for me, please, so I don't get any paint on it, I'm gonna go ahead and prime this lady up now. Now you might have noticed I had her in two parts. That's just gonna make the painting process a little bit easier. And so for priming the top portion, I went ahead and put her on some putty and a stick because I was worried about bending any of the cords hanging down low. So this will just give me better access. You can go ahead and step back, please. Now that my model is primed, it's time to begin the very tedious process of cleaning up all the areas that I don't want to be black. And for that, I'm going to be using Wraithbone. My color palette for my sisters is primarily going to be a lot of reds, yellows, and blacks, obviously, and so I just figured Wraithbone would work better with that color palette. Now, this is very time-consuming of a process to do, but ultimately, I do think it's worth it. And this method of priming it in black and then going ahead and doing my cleanup and skipping my black contrast step is ultimately really useful and makes me actually want to paint more Sister of Battle, because one of my issues with them is how detailed they are. They are a little intimidating. And so this method is my attempt to find a way so that I feel comfortable painting more of them so that I can actually get that army up and going. Okay, so I just wrapped up the very long process of re-priming all of the sections I'm going to be putting contrast paint on, and it took a while, about 2 to 3 hours. It was kind of a pain in the butt. But one of the things that made it a lot easier is today's sponsor, the Neatfee XL Bifocal 1600 lumen LED lamp. I have been using this for about a month now, and I really like it. It's a lot brighter than any of the lamps that I've used before. It covers a lot more surface area on the desk where I don't end up getting really harsh shadows on my miniature, which is especially helpful when I'm filming for the painting videos, because it means that I can see things more clearly. My eyes don't get unfocused as much when you have like a bright light shining on something. So I've really been pleased with how this lamp works. It's also dimmable, which is wonderful. Has a couple of different settings, which I really like. And it has a really nice magnification lens. As you can see, it magnifies super well, and I have been using it to be doing the detail work on my models, specifically like the eyes and finer details on some of the more like elaborate models I've been working on, and it's been really helpful for that. So if you're wanting to check this lamp out for yourself, I have put links in the description to both their homepage as well as an Amazon link, and you can check it out for yourself. I do also really like that it clamps onto the desk very easily and out of the way. The mount that it's on is very flexible and moves really easily. This actually twists, which is really nice. It has been very useful when filming as well. And it also comes in a couple of different colors, so there's a variety of options for you to choose from if you don't want white like what I got. I picked this because it went with what I had in the room already, but it also comes in a black, a gray, a silver, a pink, a rose gold, which I actually really love that color. I wish I had known that when I was picking one out, because I may have gotten that one instead, even if it didn't match, as well as a lavender and a midnight green. So there's a variety of options. So definitely check it out, but let's go ahead and get back to the painting video now. The cleanup phase is done and we can finally move on to getting some colors onto this model. And I wanted to talk a little bit about my plan for this because my sisters, I had a very specific goal for them. I want them to match my Hobby Knights, which is why I'm going to be using Blood Angels Red on a variety of the trim areas on her armor. Now, I want them to be cohesive with the Hobby Knights, but not exactly one-to-one match, because my inevitable goal is to have a giant Imperial force that I can put onto the table for like an apocalypse battle or something, and have them be very like cohesive and look like they should run together, like look like they maybe all came from the same planet, so they can build some sort of cool lore narrative story around it. So that's the idea here. So we're gonna get this Blood Angels Red on the shoulder pieces, the hip trim, as well as a couple other areas like the mace handle and some of the decorative pieces on the armor. Next up, I'm going to use Yonder Yellow for my gold substitute. I really like doing this with contrast paint because this gold is a really, really deep sort of yellowy gold color tone that I really like, especially once it has a wash on it. It does look a little cheesy straight out of the pot and everything, but once a wash is applied, it really turns into this like deep golden color, and I really, really like it. So we're gonna apply this to the halo above her head, the decorative fleur-de-lis that she has on her helmet, as well as the fleur-de-lis on her chest, and a few other key locations to sort of help break up some of our color palette. The main area that I sort of debated putting this color was the pistons on her legs. I wasn't 100% sure what I wanted to do with them, but because she is the Paragon Superior, and because I thought it would help add a little bit more of the color tone to her legs, I decided to do the pistons in that color, and I'm really happy with the results. For her multi-melta, as well as the two storm bolters on her shoulders, I'm going to be pulling out some Basilicanum Gray to get them painted up. I really like the way this ends up looking against the opaque black armor. The pop of color that it applies to the weapons just really is subtle, but obviously there, and I just really like the look of it. It also just, I don't know, it gives them a little bit of a weathered look because they have the contrast sort of finish to them as opposed to the flat opaque finish that my primer got me. I'm really liking the contrast is basically what I'm saying. Now, not only am I going to be applying this to the weapons, I'm also going to be applying this to a lot of the cabling that she has coming off of her. In particular, most of the cabling attached to the weaponry, as well as a couple of little details on, say, the mace, but I'm not the mace head. I do have a particular plan for that I'll be getting to later, and I'm really excited for it because it's a little bit different from anything that I've done, but I think it's gonna look really cool. So let's go ahead and wrap up this Basilicanum Gray and move on to some other colors. Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying this video. If you're new here and you want to see more content like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button and the bell icon for notifications. And if you've enjoyed this video specifically or hated it, let me know down in the comments and go ahead and hit the like or dislike button. But I also wanted to talk today about my Patreon, where if you want to see behind the scenes content, including photos and vlogs, as well as an opportunity to help contribute to a brand new series that will be happening on the channel sometime soon, where I am going to be building a brand new army. And my patrons are going to have an opportunity to help me choose which army, what colors to pick, and various other things to vote on. So if you're wanting to make sure to get in on that action, go ahead and check out the Patreon link down in the description below. And I believe voting for the new series will be coming up soon, possibly at the end of July. So if you're wanting to get in on the first of all of the polls and everything and really help me pick that army, make sure to go ahead and check out the Patreon. Thank you guys so much for watching, and now let's get back to the video. The sister riding around in our Paragon Warsuit has a couple of like leather pouches around her waist for easy access so that if she needs to grab her like holstered pistol or anything, she can. So for those bits, we're gonna go ahead and pull out some snakebite leather and just paint those with a single coating just to get a nice warm leather color tone down. Next up, it's time for a bit of Flesh Terror's red. I wanted to still have her loincloth and butt cape a red color tone, but I didn't want it to match the Blood Angels color tone specifically because I was worried that was going to be a little bit too much
of that color there. So I'm going to pull out Flesh Tear's Red instead, which is a deeper, darker color. I did debate potentially going a little bit brighter with the red, maybe leaning a little bit on a more orangey red color tone, just to try something a bit different with the cloth. But I was worried that was gonna look a little too much like ketchup or something like that and be a little too bright and bold. So I went with a darker color tone instead. To help maintain consistency with the existing army that I've been building, I'm going to now be using Warp Lightning on the flames of her candles as well as the Purity Seal, like the wax seal portion of it. This is something that I've done on my hobby nights as well as some of my other sisters, so it's just something that I want to keep consistent throughout the army. I'm down to the final color that I need to apply to the sister herself before I move on to the base, and that color is Apothecary White. I had wanted to find a way to inject a little bit of elegance back into the model because unlike the Space Marines, I wanted her to have and maintain that femininity that she has going for her. And I think Apothecary White was a perfect choice for this. I really love the way that it ends up drying because it has a little bit of that bluish hue to it, which always just, I don't know, is very like soft, almost ethereal to me, and I think it works perfectly for the sisters, especially on the mace head. It almost gives it this sort of marble look, and I'm really digging that. I think it's gonna stand out great on the table and just have her end up being a little bit more unique than what I've seen before. So I'm really pleased with it. Now that this is done, let's go ahead and move on to some washes. Okay, so maybe technically Blood Angels Red is not a wash, but I'm going to be sort of using it that way because I'm going to be applying this as basically a glaze to the multi-melta to add a little bit of a pop of color in there, make it stand out, identify that it has come from Mars, and just add a little bit more emphasis to it because I thought it was a little dull just being plain gray. I really like the way that this looks, so now we can go ahead and move on to some washes. And that wash is going to be Reikland's Flesh Shade. I really wanted something that was going to be subtle, would work super well with both my yellow and my red, make the black feel a little bit dirty or used, but not like really darken it or add too much depth to it anymore because it's already very, very dark. And this works super well, especially over my golds. This really brings the model together for me and finally takes her out of the ugly stage that she had kind of been sitting in for me. Like I had been pleased with my work, but I wasn't super thrilled with how it was all coming together, but the wash really saved it. I'm very happy with how it's turning out. Now, let's go ahead and move on to the base.
Okay, she's done, but I need to base her now. And I really was dissatisfied with the fact that the kit came with your standard bases. I was actually really hoping, because these models are a little bit larger, that they'd have some sort of sculpted base. That's not the case. I'm gonna fix that. I remembered I had a bunch of secret weapon miniature bases left over from a couple of other projects. You may remember them from my Corn Demon or my Bloodletter video and everything like that. So I'm gonna pick out one of these skull bases because I'm gonna have her standing on something cool and just like be super metal. And we're gonna pick one of these out and go ahead and paint it up. So I'll meet you back in a second when I've chosen the one that I want.
All right, I have found the perfect base for her. It has a river section that's running like through it, and I think it's gonna be great for her to stand over top that like she just slaughtered a bunch of fools. So let's go ahead, get it primed up in some Wraithbone, and then we're going to apply some skeleton horror to all of those lovely skulls of all of her victims. And we're gonna do this pretty liberally because we want them to be sort of darker so that they look more fresh and everything. And especially since we're gonna be having a blood pool down in the center portion, I just want them to be, you know, a little bit of contrasting, but still complementing what we're doing. And oh, I'm so excited for this base, you guys. I really love working with sculpted bases. Let's go ahead now and move on to getting that blood in. Let's move on to the river of blood she's going to be standing over. For this, I'm going to start with a base coat of Mephiston Red. This will help as a foundation for the blood effects paint I'm going to be layering over top of it next. I want to make sure that there isn't any of the pale Wraithbone color tone showing up, so while it is a little bit of a pain to get the brush into some of the more porous regions of this particular mold, the base itself was just very, very porous, and sometimes the paint wouldn't go fully into the little divots. But the actual ultimate effect, once the blood effects paint has dried onto it, ends up being really cool. So I'm very happy to go through this process and spend a little bit of extra time getting this paint everywhere that I need to be. It's time now to move on to all of those blood effect paints that I was talking about. And the first one that I'm going to be using is the Army Painter Glistening Blood. I'm going to be applying this directly from the dropper bottle onto the base and basically putting enough paint in there until I've got an even coating on the bottommost layer. Once that's done, I'll be using some of the excess paint that's there to move it up towards the edges to create a very bloody shoreline. Now, I really like this paint, but in this particular instance, I don't think it's glossy enough. Like, I really want it to be a bit shinier and look more wet, nor do I actually think the color is quite right, which is kind of why I'm using it as a filler here. So we're gonna let this dry and then move on to one final paint to really get this blood effect to the way that I want it to be and really finish up this model. And that final paint is blood for the blood god. I decided that I really actually do not like the color tone of glistening blood, nor do I think it actually glistens enough. That is one of my criticisms of that particular paint, which is kind of why I use it as a filler for what I'm doing next. The blood for the blood god, however, is a really nice, deep, rich red color tone. It's very, very glossy, and I just really like the way that it looks. So we're gonna put a thin coating of this over top everything that we've already done and apply it. And when it dries, I really like the effect that I get from it. So let's go ahead and take a look now at the final model. And here she is. And I believe I have done the Emperor proud. And I've accomplished my goal, which was trying to keep this miniature quick and easy and relatively simple to get done. Because one of the things that I struggle with Sisters of Battle is feeling like they sometimes are just so ornate that I don't even want to get to them because they just intimidate me a little bit. And now I feel like I have a good, straightforward way to get to getting them painted all up and actually getting that army ready so I can play with it, especially now that the Codex is out. There is one thing that I wish I had done on the model that I'll probably do on any of the other ones that I paint up, is I wish I had done a mid-tone like gray dry brush on the black before I had done my cleanup so that I could get a little bit of a pop on some of the details on the armor. While I think that the wash helped get some of those back out and make it stand out a little bit better than it was previously, I could have pushed it way more, and this would have been a great way to do that. But I chose not to, so that is one thing that I do kind of regret about it. Otherwise, though, I'm really happy with how she turned out. The color scheme works really well. I think she's gonna blend with the rest of my Imperial army super, super great. She's gonna match the Hobby Knights very well on the table. And the base was a lot of fun to paint. She looks like a badass standing on top of it. And I'll probably put the rest of the Paragon Warsuits also on similar bases. But she being the superior Paragon, she has the River of Blood base. That was sort of my logic with it. But let me know what you guys have thought of this week's video. I know I had a blast painting her, and I will see you guys next week for a brand new news video as well as some more hobby goodness. I'm hoping to start seeing some Age of Sigmar stuff come out for Dominion. Maybe I can even get my hands on it a bit early. We'll see.